restaurants has popped up in the area, and they just want to but it's a very different dynamic from Louisville, which I think is really interesting.
Just so we can get on camera.
Oh, okay.
Access, yeah.
Hello, everyone. Welcome.
What's up?
Hi, can y'all hear me okay? Yeah. Yes. So happy that everyone made it on a Friday. It's awesome that we have wonderful guests here. DJ Rob Swift and Mr. Sinister all the way from Queens, New York. Hey!
X-Ecutioners. Well, let's go. Big it up to Razul.
Yes, thank you for coordinating. We really appreciate that. We are going to talk a little bit today about the modernization of DJing, but with folks who were on the ground floor of when kind of the golden age of hip-hop was what it was in New York, and DJing was a craft that people had to study and learn. So we're going to learn a little bit about that today. We're going to start off with a little intro so you get a sense of what we're going to talk about, and then we'll kind of tag team going back and forth with some questions and some demo. Sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay, awesome. I'll let you take it over.
State. If this is the Hoosier State, then let me hear you make some noise right now. We are the X-Ecutioners. I'd like to formally introduce Mr. Sinister from East Elmhurst, Queens. Make some noise, y'all. That's what I'm talking about. Talking to you live and direct right now from the MIC, straight from Queens, New York City, Jackson Heights, that is. They call me Mr. Brolic Arm for obvious reasons, aka DJ Rob Swift. And Razul, if you don't mind, I'm just gonna turn it up like a hair, just a hair. We got my man, DJ Metronome, man in the sound. Make some noise for Metronome. Once again, make some noise for our beautiful moderator, Lauren. Lauren, thank you. All right, Hoosier State, are y'all ready for Mr. Sinister and myself to cut things up right now? Yeah! I think they're ready, Sid. Let's go.
I keep the gangster, the gangster. Feel me? I spit that book. Yeah. I put a spell on you. Because you're mine.
Ricky, goes out Ricky, Ricky. This goes out to you, you. This goes out to you. This goes out to you. This goes out to you, you. Your reign on the top was short like leprechaun,
So that's it. That's our little demo. So you guys have an idea of what we're about. We're gonna ask Lauren to come back up here, and we'll start this little discussion.
Cool. So I'm not sure how closely everyone could see. Lots of hand movements, lots of things spinning, lots of dials moving. Can you just give us a primer of what, on a technical level and an artistry level, it takes to do what you just did?
It takes a lot of focus. You have to channel 3 of your 5 senses: your sense of sight, your sense of touch, and your sense of hearing have to work in harmony, all together in unison, in order to be able to manipulate the sounds that you're working with from these different songs. And in the case of pairing up with another DJ, like myself and Mr. Sinister did, you also have to be mindful of what the other person is doing and keep time. So it's the same thing as a band jamming together in someone's garage. We just weren't fortunate enough to have access to the kind of money it takes to learn how to play instruments, you know? Buying instruments, taking lessons in bass or piano, that was just something that wasn't afforded to us as kids. So we applied that innate instinct to be musical onto the turntables that we had in our household growing up. So it's the same principle, we're just using different equipment.
Yeah, can you talk a little bit more about that? I read that your father was a DJ, you had some merengue in the house, and these kinds of things. So talk about how that influenced your particular style.
So I'm the son of Colombian immigrants. My parents migrated here to the States in the late 60s. They did it the old-fashioned way. My father came first, got himself established, got a job, then sent for my mom and my older brother. And I was born in New York City in 1972. I know I don't look it, but I'm 46 years old. And my dad brought over his love for salsa, merengue, cumbia, which is really popular in Colombia. And it's cumbia, not kumba. And I'm just messing with you, Joey. And my brother and I were just super lucky because we grew up in a household with all of the equipment that the pioneer hip-hop legends like Kool Herc, Africa Bambaataa, Grandmaster Theodore, Grandmaster Flash were using. The turntables were the main piece of equipment that allowed the DJs to connect with the breakdancers and the rappers and the graffiti artists. And it just so happened that my dad had turntables at home, so it worked out great. And that to me is the beauty of hip hop, is you're kind of being resourceful in turning a machine like the turntable, which wasn't meant for us to do what we do, and you're redefining its purpose by scratching and all the crazy stuff that you saw us do in our little presentation at the outset.
Right. I mean, early on, you had such discipline. I read practicing sometimes 6 hours a day. What does that consist of for the uninitiated? If you could give us like a little sense of what are you practicing, how are you determining where to cut, and scratch? Like, what goes into that?
So, in the early days of this art form, before technology really took a hold of what we do as DJs, at age 12, at least for me, there was no real access to the music that these DJs that I mentioned earlier were doing, except for cassette tapes, right? So it's not like we had smartphones back then or laptops, whereas now a lot of the younger DJs that are coming into this art form could open up their laptop or take their phone out of their pockets, click on a YouTube link and learn how to DJ from their phone. Back then, you would study cassette tapes of park jams. Park jams were these outdoor gatherings that DJs would throw because they couldn't get into the expensive nightclubs in New York City, like the Roxy, for example. So again, you're coming up as a kid and you're thinking of resourceful ways to do what those DJs did in those nightclubs for people. So the next best thing is you throw a free party in the park. And what people would do is they would go gather around these DJs, listen to the music, and thankfully there were people that had the foresight to record a lot of these parties. Back then, recording entailed you taking your boombox radio to the park, buying maybe 2 or 3 blank Sony cassette tapes, and standing next to the speaker the whole day, and you're just recording the sets. And then these cassette tapes would then make their way across New York City. So that person that recorded that park jam featuring Jazzy J would dub a copy for his brother, and then his brother would dub a copy for his friend in high school, and then his friend in high school would dub a copy for his cousin in another borough, and that tape would eventually make it to my brother's hands, and my brother would sit me down and explain everything that was happening, what Jazzy J, Theodore, Grandmaster Flash were doing on those cassette tapes. And then I would have to figure out a way to sonically break down and decode the movements that they were doing to create the sounds I was hearing. And then by trial and error, eventually I would figure out, oh, that's what Jazzy J is doing to get that sound. Oh, that's what Flash is doing to repeat that word over and over again. So it was a lot of patience, a lot of determination, but it was also fun. So now looking back and talking to you, Lauren, I could kind of break down the process in this scientific way. But at the time, I had no idea that I was determined. I had no idea that that I was super focused. I was just having fun,
right?
You know, and that's the thing about this art is the techniques that Sinister and I demonstrated for you in our little intro were techniques that were created by DJs that were just exploring what this machine could do. And now, here we are in Indiana University, like, having this, like, discussion about these techniques that these DJs had no idea would go on to create this genre of expression for kids like myself.
Right, right. I mean, it's art. There's artistry, obviously, that is attached to it. When you're talking about some of the original kind of moves that you learned, could you give us a sense of that? Like, is there a particular, like, scratch or a turn?
Totally,
or something
totally, totally. So, initially, in the early days of hip-hop, again, it was young black teens, Latino teens that were trying to figure out a creative, healthy way to express themselves. And they chose to apply that innate urge. We all have it. It's in us all to want to be creative onto the turntables. Now, if you or a drummer and you have access to a drum kit, you learn how to pick up the sticks, You learn what the kick drum does, you learn what the hi-hat does, you learn what the snare drum does, you learn what the cymbals do. But again, these kids weren't fortunate enough. It's not like they came from the economic background it took to invest into a drum kit and drum lessons. So what they would do is they would manipulate the drum sounds on actual songs. So here's an example of one very popular beat. This is called Impeach the President. Go figure. So let's just listen to the drum track.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have the honey drippers in the house tonight.
Now here's the issue. You have a drum track that only plays for a certain amount of time before the talking starts. And if we were thinking about, let's say, a garage band, and there was a person on bass, a person on drum, a person on guitar, and then a singer, the instrumentalists, the musicians, are providing a bed of music for that singer to sing over. But how do you sing over this?
They just got back from Washington, D.C.
Because there's words.
I think they got something they want.
So the DJ's responsibility was to figure out a way to loop the drum section and keep time so that the rappers, a la the singers in the garage band, could rap over the beats. So what they would do is they would buy 2 copies of a song, duplicate records, and they would mark the records with pieces of tape. Now, a lot of these companies, because they study the traditional ways of DJing, you could buy a control record that allows you to use a laptop to play music, an MP3. And what they'll do is they'll put a white mark on the label. But back then, what we would do is we would take stickers from cassette tapes, mark the label, and the mark became our guide. So we could track the mark and understand how many revolutions we had to spin back to loop a specific section, where specific sounds fell. So you went from playing this drum beat on one record or on one turntable that only lasted 2 bars,
Ladies and gentlemen,
before the talking starts, to looping it like so. So now you have a drum beat looped. As you can see, I wasn't looking at the laptop and I wasn't using headphones. That was me instinctively knowing how many rotations I needed to rewind to get to the top of the drum beat. And I could do it because to me it's like breathing or walking. It's just instincts that take over. So did you guys notice that right before the second bar, you hear the talking begin? So then, back then, you would have to figure out a way to take the talking out so that you just have the drum beat. So what you would do is add a scratch to cover up that talking, that space. How you would
I wish you guys had a bird's eye view, like literally see what I'm seeing, because it kind of puts you in a trance. It's a really powerful thing to watch, and we're seeing that we're moving away from having those markers that you have now. There's this automation, there's Pro Tools, there's a way to just press repeat and drop things in places now. What do you think is lost in terms of the art of DJing by these technological advances?
I think the instincts are being sacrificed. I feel like now when you learn how to DJ, you're not having to experience the struggle of training your instincts and your senses. So if you guys were up here, I'll just actually turn this around. And I know you guys will be able to kind of see. This is a program I'm running on my laptop called Serato DJ. The beauty of the program is I'm flying in from New York City and I don't have to bring my entire collection of records on the plane and pay whatever thousands of dollars they charge me for excess baggage and weight and stuff, right? Or I don't have to worry about my records being damaged by baggage handlers or lost by the airlines. So I bring my laptop and it comes with me on the plane and I store it in a carry-on compartment and I'm happy, right? But there are people that are misusing the convenience of having this laptop. And what I mean by that is, so now you have this app. I'm gonna just play this side of the turntable here, the right side, and you see the virtual deck, right? So you have a virtual deck that lets you know where the mark is moving, so you could literally track the sounds now by looking at the laptop. But what happens as a result, new people to this art form that are learning now, instead of cultivating their instincts and training their eyes to track the mark on the label, right? What happens is they start looking at the computer. So what they're doing now is, I catch a lot of students of mine that want to learn the more advanced techniques of this art, want to compete in DJ battles. They come to me and I ask them, all right, can you loop a beat? Can you keep time? Yeah, I can. I could do that, Rob. And I'm like, show me. And then they get on and do this. I kid you not. That's what happens. They look at the laptop and I'm like, I stop them and I'm like, all right, so you're technically keeping time, but if I darken the screen, can you do it? And sure enough, when I darken the screen, they're lost. They don't know how to access the senses it takes, or the instincts, I should say. They don't access the instincts it takes to just man the equipment and control it and make it cooperate with your movements. They just can't do it because they're relying on the computer to tell them what's happening. And for me, you know, I'll admit this to anyone, I'm a DJ snob. I've been DJing for a long time, and this art has been passed down to me by my older brother, who came up with the first wave of hip-hop kids doing this in the streets. I covet this art, and I get offended, to be honest with you, when I see someone say they're a DJ, but they're misapplying the techniques, you know? So that is the danger in the technology and the mechanization of this art, is that these companies now, when that happens, when a DJ is looking at the computer, the artist, the person that I would credit for applying the creativity is not the DJ, it's the coder of that app that's somewhere in, I don't know, California, like designing some new code for some new app. You know, like the art is about what you, the person, is doing on the turntables, not what the computer is doing for you. But we also live in a technological age, and you know, these days we can't get around without MapQuest. Now, remember MapQuest? Right? So I'm so old, I said MapQuest. I meant to say without like navigation, right? But I remember I used to date a girl. I live in New York. I used to date a girl in New Hampshire, and I used to drive 6 hours one week in a month, and I would MapQuest the directions and like memorize where I had to exit, all that stuff. And now you just type in the address and you just let the, you know, let her from up there and in the satellite world just guide you. So there are great things about technology, and then there are things about it that I feel hurt the art.
Well, to double back on that, so much about DJing is not just the mechanics of it, but also reading the crowd and responding to the vibe in the room. And so how do you do that when your eyes are glued to a computer screen?
How do you do that? You can't. You can't. It's true. So usually now what happens is Sinister and I actually do this instinctively. Again, you're gonna hear me say that word a lot. When we set up, we put our laptops on the side because we want you guys to see us doing this, and we want to see how you're reacting to us doing this, right? So we don't want anything in front of us. We don't want anything blocking your view of what our hands are doing. But if you go, and after I say this, when you go out, the next time you go out, look at the DJ setup, and you'll notice that the laptop is actually here on a stand. So what happens is they're DJing, looking at the laptop, and they're not connecting with you guys out there. And the intent behind this art form of DJing is to connect with your audience. You're not playing music for yourself. You're playing music for people, and then you're enhancing the experience of listening to this music with the technical scratching and beat juggling that you saw us do earlier. But if you're super like focused on what the BPMs of a song are on your laptop and where your marks are and what MP3 you're gonna play next, and you're never like engaging the audience, then there's a disconnect, and you miss out on the whole point of what DJing is, which is connecting with your audience. So it's harder to do that when you're trapped in the matrix of a DJ app, the matrix of the computer. You know, this is an analog art form that was meant to be experienced by you as you're playing and manipulating the music, and the people listening to their favorite songs being manipulated, you know, and there's this back and forth interaction. So it's changed a lot for sure. And what myself and Mr. Sinister are trying to do is preserve it. And, you know, we're thankful to be here today to be able to talk about it and just shed light, yeah, on how things are, the differences that you see now with DJing.
I wondered if we could get Mr. Sinister.
Yeah, let's get Sin up here.
Because one of the important aspects of kind of the history of this also were like the DJ battles, collaborations, and crews. And so I wanted to hear a little bit more about your partnership, how you ended up working together, and what you think an up-and-coming DJ can learn, just like any other artist, with collaborating versus the individualism of learning, you know, the technology and then going to a gig and then getting your money and leaving and not knowing anyone else in your field. Talk a little bit about community amongst DJs.
I love that question. Get up here, man, so you can see. I'm here. So in 1990, a good friend of mine from my neighborhood named Juju, he's in a group called the Beatnuts, a hip hop group, knew how much I love DJing and did me the best favor a friend could do. He introduced me to a guy named Dr. Butcher, who was probably the most respected DJ in our neighborhood, and convinced me to let him take me to Dr. Butcher's house. His real name is Andrew. And I went to Drew's house, and I got to see what I saw other DJs do on videotape in a lot of these DJ competitions that I referenced earlier, but live in the flesh, literally inches away from the guy doing it. You know, I'm 18 years old, And it's not like I was old enough to get inside a lot of these venues that were doing these battles. So I never, aside from me, I didn't know anyone that could DJ like this in my neighborhood. And I went to Dr. Butcher's house and I was just blown away. And then he took me on as his student. And lo and behold, unbeknownst to me, he was also training another guy. And he's standing right next to me, Joey. And he was training Joey, and at the time, Joey was actually a house DJ. He wasn't even like really immersed in the hip hop side of things as much as I was. And one day I went to Dr. Butcher's house, and Joey was there practicing with Drew, and it was just cool because we all connected through this art, through this music. And
like that, I'm gonna emphasize it.
Yeah, and that was 1991. No, 1990. It was 1990 when we met. So how did you meet Drew?
I met Drew through one of my boys actually that came to my house. And at that time, I thought I was like the best thing in the world. I think every DJ thinks that once in a while. But anyway, my boy came to my house, and he used to come often. And he told me one day, he said, yo, I just finished coming from this guy, Drew's house, man, and yo, he's incredible, you gotta go see him. So you know me, I'm like, get out of here, man, I could beat him, I know I could beat him. You know, he was like, yo, I'm telling you to go. So anyway, I said, I'm gonna go and see what this guy's about. So I went over there, and he's a mad humble brother, mad cool. We spoke for a minute, and he was like, yeah, so my man tells you that you DJ. I said, yeah, he tells you DJ too. So anyway, he asked me to get on, and I said, no, you get on. So we were going back and forth with that for a minute. So he was like, all right, I'll get on. So anyway, to make a long story short, after he got on, I didn't get on. That was it. That's how intense it was. Like Rob was saying, I didn't even get on after that. I couldn't. I was just too nervous. I felt embarrassed. I was like, I'm not going to get on. So Rob he had mentioned to me that, he said, look, you know, you could come over and practice with me. And I was really, really grateful for that because I knew that I could learn from him. You know, just from seeing that one thing, I knew that, you know, I had a lot to learn. And he told me, yeah, you know, I trained with somebody else too. I practiced with this other brother that comes over, his name is Rob. And that's how I met Rob. And we started hooking up at Drew's house. And then it eventually started to hook up at his house. And that's how I met Drew and Robin.
Yeah, the reason Drew, the reason Sinister and I started training at my house was because I would say about a year after I initially met Sin, our mentor Dr. Butcher started to immerse himself into producing, which is a very natural progression DJs make. You start off on turntables, and then there comes a point where you feel like, now I want to make the music that I manipulate. So Drew started to become more involved in producing music and working with rap groups. So it's almost like our mentor sort of kind of left it in our hands, everything that he taught us. Sure. So I wanted to compete in my last battle, the 1992, super dating myself, the 1992 DMC, and I didn't have Dr. Butcher to train with, so I asked Joey to help me. And Joey lives, at the time, Joey lived about a mile and a half from me. And I kid you not, I say this story a lot.
He does.
Yeah. Joey would walk to my house, rain, sleet, snow, did not matter. He would walk to my house and just sit down and train me and time me and give me tips on things that I could do to improve my routine and prepare better. I remember there were days if the weather was really bad, but I wanted him to come over, I'd bribe him by offering him like Twinkies or like my mom used to buy these I don't know if you guys are familiar with ho-hos. They're like the chocolate Twinkies.
Do they have ho-hos here?
No, and I would be like, yo, Joey, like if you come over, man, you can eat all the ho-hos I have at the house. And he would be like, I'll be there in 45 minutes. But I knew it wasn't about the ho-hos. I know he just wanted to help me travel, you know? Yeah, and sure enough, if you go on my YouTube page and go on youtube.com/DJ Rob Swift and do a search for 1992 DMC winning set, the video would pop up, and you see me on the turntables, and you see Mr. Sinister at the time, flat top haircuts,
the flat top,
and you see Sinister next to me, holding records, feeding me records, and like coaching me and just bopping for me, and like I'm getting goosebumps just telling that story now, because like that, Lauren, to answer your question, I feel is what's missing now in DJing, and I hate to be that guy, and back in my time and the way things are now and all that stuff, but because it was this analog experience that we were having with turntables, that analog experience transferred over to the analog experience that you have with just another human, like someone coming to your house and talking to you and training with you and motivating you and coaching you. Those are moments that I wouldn't trade for anything.
Amen.
Anything.
Amen.
But now, what I see from a lot of the young DJs is they buy the equipment, they set it up in their bedrooms, and they never leave. They stay in their bedrooms. So what happens is they're in their bedrooms and they buy a GoPro and they record a 60-second IG clip, and then they post it to IG, and they see the comments but never interact in person with the people that are commenting.
That's right.
They never leave their bedroom. So as a result, now the way technology is and the mechanization of this art form, what you have is a discipline that was intended for people interaction being redefined into this like virtual experience of like you DJ and then you wait for someone to comment on your clip and then you answer back on your phone. Like it's just changed in so many different ways. So as a result, what then that in turn ends up affecting is how that bedroom DJ interacts with people when he or she eventually does get out in public. You know, like they're shy, they're introverted, they're awkward about connecting with that audience because all they know is posting a 60-second IG clip, you know, onto their social media. So I'm thankful that Sin and I came up in those like organic days of just interacting with another person and going over each other's houses and practicing and not doing everything through social media.
Young lady.
I'd love to just ask, I mean, I totally get what you're saying about the kind of fall of the golden age and stuff, but I wonder, is there anything in the technology that actually allows you to do things you couldn't do before, or improve on anything? I mean, it seems like what you're saying is that the technology just gives you shortcuts to do things that you could do in other ways with the equipment beforehand, but is there anything new that it actually adds, or are there some benefit? Is there any silver lining to the golden age?
There's a silver lining for sure. There are benefits. It's not all bad. So one example is, let's say this happens so much when Sinister and I train at my house. We're sitting down in my home studio and we're thinking, all right, what do we want to do today? How do we want to be creative? What song should we use? And a song will pop in my mind. Let's use this, and maybe we could freak this part. And then Sinister would be like, oh, but I don't have that in my laptop. No problem. Take my thumb drive out. I'll put the MP3 on the thumb drive here. Within seconds, he has the song, and now we could get creative. Back in 1991, if Sin was at my house, and I was like, I have an idea. Let's use this song. Let's freak this part. Oh, but I don't have that song. All right, maybe next week we could go to the record store and buy the record, and then you know, the day after that I'll go to your house and practice. So it's like the creative aspect of it. Back when we were training in the early days of generating our reputation and cultivating our styles, the creativity would be delayed a lot of times. You couldn't just jump on and just start getting busy because, again, technology now makes things faster. So that's definitely one of the benefits that I could think of. And don't get me wrong, it's definitely not all bad. But I also feel like because I come from a more traditional part of this art form, I bring that experience with me in the new age of technology, whereas a younger DJ that never went through that struggle might not see the danger in taking the shortcuts, you know? So yeah, but there definitely are benefits to this art. Oh, the mixers are, yeah, the mixers, when we were coming up, they broke easier. They weren't equipped with a lot of the onboard effects that you have now, echoing and filtering and reverb. Creatively, a lot of the equipment, if you use it right, does open the possibilities of what you could do as a DJ, for sure.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask that question, so thank you. Because, you know, you don't have to carry around crates, like you said, of records, or have to wait until something comes out to necessarily get it. But I wanted to ask, you both are working toward preserving this art form and sharing it with another younger generation. And I just wanted to see why you are motivated to do that. If you could talk about why you think it's important that you kind of have this mentorship with the new generation of DJs coming up, and what you can impart to them that you feel like they may not get otherwise.
I feel a responsibility to expose as much as I can of this art, because the art itself has done so much for me. Like, you guys don't realize, man, like I could be doing so many other things right now that aren't fun, you know? Like, you know, I could, and it's not to say that like having a desk job isn't fun. It might be fun for someone else. But like I feel like how cool is it for me to be able to say that DJing has taken me to Beirut, Lebanon? Yes. How cool is that? That a 12-year-old kid that was listening to cassette tapes as an adult is traveling the world, learning about different cultures, meeting different people, touching people through an art that 12-year-old did for fun. When I was 12, I had no intentions of making money off this or teaching. I teach at a university in the city, in New York City, called the New School. And every time I walk in there, I pinch myself like, this cannot be real. I'm not teaching a class of DJing at a university. So because of that, I feel like I owe a debt to the pioneers that created this art, and it's just nothing for me to do what I can to not just embrace the popularity that comes with what I do. You know, I'm popular, a lot of people know who I am, and I'm thankful for that, but that's just like one facet of this art form, and I just feel like it is an art form, and I'm also old enough to remember what happened to a lot of the other elements of hip-hop. Graffiti and b-boying specifically were two elements of hip-hop that were erased from our culture at one point. And I just don't want to see that happening. Well, I don't want to see that happen to DJing, you know? And technology, it has its good and bad, you know, and if it's misused, this art could turn into like a joke, I feel. And in some ways it has already. Like, there are people that DJ parties and don't even use turntables, like they'll just sit in front of a laptop.
Last night.
Yeah, or DJs that'll DJ a party from their phone, you know? So because of that, I just feel a responsibility to do what I can to preserve it and expose the artistry in it to as many people as possible.
Well, Rob said it all pretty much the same way. You know, we love music from the heart, and the same way it was given to us, we're giving it back. You know, I mean, this is taking us. We've been on 4 tours. We've been in 19 countries because of this, because of music strictly. It's given us a lot. The Lord has given us a lot with this culture. We stayed faithful with it. We love music. We do it because we love it, and we try to keep the art alive and try to let the people that are coming up in it know that it's basically done for passion. It's the passion that keeps you going. Not even so much for the money. You know, we started out with, we had straight passion for it, and the passion is what brought us into the business. It brought us into the making the money and getting the notoriety and the fame. We weren't thinking about any of that, like Rob said. We strictly had passion for it, and we try to, you know, instill that to the kids that are doing it today. A lot of kids are doing it for the wrong reasons. They're doing it because they want to make money, they want to be famous. I mean, hey, I want to make money too. You know, I'm pretty sure there's nothing wrong with that. You know, but it starts with the passion, and we try to instill that to let people know to follow your dreams, to do what they want to do. Stay true with the art form. And at the same time, he just told me just now, Metronome, he told me when I walked in here, he said, there's a guy that I know, he said that he learned from you in New York. And then he told me, he said, oh, I got the mix CD, I listen to it all the time. That's a blessing for me to hear that. I'm very grateful for that. It lets me know that, you know, I'm still touching people, you know, even with the stuff I did back then. And I did it for a passion, and I still have the passion. Basically, that's what we try to instill to the kids, to just keep it going and do it because you love it. Everything else follows after, you know?
Thanks. I just wanted to turn it over for any questions or any comments we wanted to ask.
I had a question about the park jams. How well have those been collected or archived?
They've been archived pretty well, thankfully. If you could go on YouTube right now and just do a search for Grandmaster Flash, Park Jam, Africa Bambaataa, Jazzy J, and people have uploaded cassette tapes that they've kept onto YouTube, and you could listen to these parties. And I encourage everyone to do so if you've never experienced listening to a teenage kid in front of other kids in a park jamming. It's a great way to kind of like transport yourself back to that time and get a feel for what it sounded like. You know, it's interesting because as you ask that question, I think about what people perceive as hip-hop to be now and what hip-hop was back then. And the beautiful thing about this specific discipline, DJing, is that hip-hop DJing is a song like this in the hands of a kid like me in 1982 is hip-hop. Anyone recognize this song? Aerosmith, Walk This Way. In my, you see, in let's say your hands, you're at home and you play it, it's a rock record. In my hands, it's a hip-hop record. And I could go from playing a song like this so I could go from playing this. Start it again. The volume dropped. So I could go from playing this to playing that. And this is a jazz song. So the beauty of hip hop is you could go from rock to jazz to disco, and play all these different genres of music, but in the hands of a Grandmaster Flash or a Jazzy J or a Grand Wizard Theodore, it becomes these songs that lose their classification, and it's just energy and rhythm, and how is that energy and rhythm influencing the people dancing. Whereas now you could go to a bar or a club, let's say in New York City, and I'm speaking from experience, and I'll play this song, and someone, let's say I'll play this song, and someone will walk up to me, to the DJ booth, and be like, do you have this hip hop song? And in my eyes, I'm like, I'm playing hip hop right now. Like, what I'm doing to it is hip hop. But they're like, no, I want to hear Drake. Could you play this? So it's like what hip hop is to people now is so different from what it was to the kids coming up listening to the DJs in yesteryear, you know? So, and I don't, it's funny, and I do say it in a kind of teasing way, like I'm poking fun to some degree, but at the same time, I don't mean to come off like, you know, if you like Drake and that's hip hop to you, that's fine. But I think that there was a more openness to what the DJ did back then. Whereas now it's just play the hip hop songs that I know to be hip hop, that I hear on the radio, that I listen to on the car drive to the venue. I want to hear those same songs. Whereas back then, it was just more of a, take me on the journey, man. Wherever you take me, I'm gonna trust that I'm gonna be exposed to some good music.
Rob, we have time just for one more question. Also, Daniel, we're going to start at 2:45. Just to let everybody know we're just pushing everything back 15 minutes, if that's okay. So we have time for one more question, then allow people to get dessert or whatever else, and then we can go back to the other room. Appreciate it.
What's good? I'm Gabriel, and I just wanted to, thank you all for gracing us, because I think that a lot of this history needs to be told and retold and retold. But I think in the same vein that we're on right now, I just want to invite you to think about the DJ as a time traveler. You're talking about kind of like these moments whereby you might be playing this music that for you is hip hop in this particular decade, that for somebody else in this other decade isn't. But you're bridging this through your actual techniques. There's ways that scratching, right, is going into a certain moment and intervening to almost bridge it to our contemporary moment. So I guess I'm just inviting you to run with me a little bit on that idea, right? And perhaps if you can talk about some of these techniques, how they might be related.
I'm with you, Gabe. I'm 100%. Again, I teach a class called DJ Skills and Styles at the New School University in New York, and kids from all walks of life take my class that never experienced not just listening and interpreting a song like Walk This Way as a hip-hop song, but never so much as held a record in their hands, because they're used to doing everything on their phones. And starting off, they're awkward about touching the turntable. Some of them have broken needles just trying to learn how to place the needle on a record. And the whole time, I'm just kind of gradually walking them through the experience of building a relationship with an analog piece of equipment. So it's like these kids start to get out of a DJ class more than just it being the perception that they have of a DJ at a festival pumping their fist in front of thousands of people. That now they're learning about the delicateness in controlling a turntable and how you have to kind of build a physical relationship with it. Something that, a piece of machine that didn't exist when they were born. To them, at least. It existed to me, but to them, what they know is an iPad or a laptop or a phone. And now I have this doofy looking turntable in front of them. And they have to learn how to interact with it in a way that the turntable responds to everything that they want it to do. And seeing that happen from orientation day, and then by the end of the semester, I had one student in the fall term named Maisie, who literally lifted her foot onto the record and scratched the record with her foot and took her hand and was moving the fader. Owning the equipment. Going from, whoa, Rob, like, I'm so scared to touch it, like, please, like, don't get mad if I break it. Like, they're just super awkward in the first couple of weeks, to they just become one with the equipment by the end of the semester. So you're right, the techniques do serve as a bridge for them to, like, learn about this art. And as they're learning, I do my best to impart a lot of the historical anecdotes that exist. A lot of the DJs that created these techniques, again, were doing this not for fame or glory or money, but to be expressive, to do something productive, and passing that on to someone of a Maisie's caliber who doesn't know what DJing is beyond what they see in a festival. That is a rewarding thing for me to be able to witness and experience over the course of 3.5 months. 16 weeks, I get to see students go from learning how to place the record onto the turntable to performing a 10-minute set. So yeah, like I am super appreciative of the opportunity to teach at the New School. This is my 3rd time here in Indiana with you Hoosiers. And I'm appreciative of that as well, because I know that I think back to my dad and him telling me, like, Rob, go back to school after I graduated college. Don't waste your time with that DJing stuff. And he was wrong. It wasn't a waste of time. You know, he was wrong, and it's paid off in so many different ways. And I've managed to give back. I've managed to give back and make a mark on American culture. The kind of mark that I don't think I would have been able to make if I just went back and took his path, the path that he wanted me to. So yeah. I'd like to give a big shout to Razul. Get up here, Razul, for putting this together. And thank you guys for coming out. Big shout to my boy Sin. Love you, man. Big shout to Metronome for setting up the equipment.
And also